Good, how are you?
Good? All right. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Law of New Jersey, notice of this October 10th, 2023 meeting of the Bridgewater-Raritan Regional Board of Education was posted electronically on the district website and provided on October 27th, 2023 by sending a 48-hour written notice to the Courier News, Star Ledger, Bridgewater Township Clerk, Raritan Borough Clerk, and by posting on the bulletin board in the Hyman v. Wade Administration Building. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Stars, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Lochran, Mr. Pepe,
Here.
Ms. Kalistri, here. Mr. Joshi, Ms. Friedlander,
Here.
Ms. Lee, Ms. Levitt, Mr. Walker,
Here.
Mr. Singer.
Here. We are up to our community forum tonight on referendum, so I will turn it over to our superintendent, Mr. Beers.
Thank you, Mr. Singer. So tonight, we're going to have a presentation, a community forum on question 3, which will be voted on next Tuesday. But before we start up, I just wanted to go over some of the details on how we got where we are today. So this process has been ongoing for almost 3 years, from what I understand, before I joined the district 2.5 years ago. So just before I joined the district in 2021, the Board of Education conducted a facilities audit and sent out a community survey. One of the questions on this survey read as follows: what projects would need to be included to gain your support for any district-wide referendum? Please list. Number 3 on that list was full-day kindergarten. So when we ask how did we get to this moment right now, well, we started almost 3 years ago, polling the community, eliciting input, and then working towards that goal. If we fast forward to March 2023, we know that both questions 1 and 2 passed by a fairly significant margin. However, question 3, which is on the ballot for Tuesday, is tied to question 2 from March, meaning this: if question 3 does not pass, then question 2 from March is null and void as well. All right, so this is really important for us to get the message across, remind our constituents to get out and vote. And right now, I'm going to welcome one of our partners in this project, Frank Massinio from Solutions Architecture. So both me and Frank are going to take you through this presentation. And at the end of the presentation, we're going to open it up to questions from the audience, the community, and also any questions from the Board of Education. Thank you. So as I had mentioned before, in March 2023, voters overwhelmingly approved bond questions funding necessary facilities for full-day kindergarten. Now, to support the annual operating costs of the full-day kindergarten program, the school district is holding a special question vote on Tuesday, November 7th to support this initiative. Now, one of the questions that has come up a few times, and I think it's important for the public to know, is why didn't we ask this question back in March? And that's a valid question, and the reason is as follows. If the school district is looking to increase our budget, which is what this question does, that vote has to take place in November. So again, any vote where you're expanding operations and you're expanding your year-over-year budget has to take place on Election Day. So essentially what we voted on last March was really the bricks and mortar of the operations. Now what this question is about are the people who are really going to deliver this program for our community. And what are we looking at, and what are the reasons why we need full-day kindergarten? One is an equity issue. So with this, all Bridgewater students, regardless of socioeconomic status, regardless of their address, are going to experience a rich full-day kindergarten program that's going to prepare them for success. There's been a few articles recently on 101.5 and NJ.com. There are fewer than 10 districts in the entire state of New Jersey that do not have full-day kindergarten, and that number is shrinking each year. So we certainly don't want to be on this list of one of the few schools that do not have kindergarten, and there are certainly a lot of reasons from an educational standpoint why it's critical. Now, the opportunity that we have with our full-day kindergarten is as follows. Again, the whole plan is to shift grades in order to create space. And this is what I mean. Our primary schools will now be K through 3. Intermediates would be 4 and 5. We would put an addition on the middle school, making that institution 6 through 8, and then the high school would stay as is. So what we get out of that is not just an enhanced kindergarten program, but also enhanced programming at the middle school. We're talking about consistency of curriculum, expanded extracurricular, co-curricular activities. And then finally, the future value. We're looking to provide this program in order to commit to our taxpayers, to our neighbors, that we're gonna provide the best possible product, not just for the people in our hallways now, but for the generations to come. And that's why this is such an important question, that a vote yes will really create generational change throughout this district. So finally, what we're voting on November 7th again, is the operating cost to support this kindergarten program. And we're looking at 15 general education teachers, 2 special education teachers, custodians, and then this would also pay for the added utility and transportation costs. Next, I'd like to turn it over to our partner, Mr. Messinio.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. So, as Mr. Beers said, this question for November 7th is about operational costs, and it's about funding the project that was already approved in March. And we're going to talk a little bit about what was approved in March so that you understand what goes hand in hand with the November question. So in March, in order to create this grade realignment, we had to come up with an addition at the middle school. That would allow for grade 6 to come up and for it to become a traditional 6, 7, and 8 middle school. That addition cost that's already been approved by the Department of Ed along with debt service aid is $21.3 million. The middle school renovations are also going to accommodate that 6th grade. So we're not only putting an addition on to accommodate classrooms, we need to renovate other classrooms that are already existing in order to meet the needs of the 6th grade. And then, in order to house full-day kindergarten at the primary schools, renovations need to be done to those classrooms to accommodate toilets and all of the criteria necessary for a full-day kindergarten program. This is simply a more detailed breakdown. It shows the debt service aid, but it talks about what question 2 is in its essence. Question 2 is comprised of a middle school addition and renovations to create a model 6, 7, and 8 middle school, and would also free up space at the elementary schools that will allow for the implementation of the full-day kindergarten. The additions, as I had mentioned previously, and the renovations, the total project cost was $28.2 million. The renovations at the primary schools was about $6.5 million, for a total of $34.7 million for question number 2. The approved debt service aid for both of those middle school renovations and the renovations at the primary school was about $5.4 million, reducing the taxable impact to $29.3 million for question 2. Now, question 2 was approved in March. It was approved by the voters so that this question could move forward. But tagged to this question is the November 7th vote on the operational cost. So let's talk a little bit more about the details of what's included in the middle school renovations and the additions. So the orange boxes that you see on the screen, those are all the classrooms that will be renovated. Renovations to the cafeteria, to the media center, locker rooms and team rooms, as well as renovations to 5 special classrooms, STEM lab, theater, music, art, and STEAM. The blue boxes, the blue box that you see on the left, that is the addition itself. We're creating a new wing, very similar to the 3 other wings that are there, and there will be a walkway that ties the 3 together. Oh. So on the image on the right is a rendering of what that addition could look like. It would match the existing aesthetic of the existing building and create a new entrance and a new covered walkway. The item you see in yellow is how we would attach the new addition to the other wing, so you're not walking back and forth from one wing back to the main building to get into the new wing. Now you can completely circulate from the wings throughout. This is basically a blow-up plan of what the addition, it's a 2-story addition, and it would house 12 general classrooms, 3 science labs, 2 sets of restrooms, a copier or administrative space, as well as an office, and then 2 small group instruction classrooms. And then we get into the renovations at the primary schools that would accommodate the full-day kindergarten. The classrooms that you're looking at in orange are the rooms to be renovated. The renovations would include new toilet rooms, new toilet spaces, creating flexible furnishings and creating necessary, space that will support the curriculum. These are an idea of what those new full-day kindergarten classrooms could look like. It's a conceptual drawing. If, in fact, November gets approved, then we would go into designing those spaces with the faculty so that they could see, we could get to the bottom of how those rooms are going to look. This is Bradley Gardens. Very similarly, the spaces in orange are those rooms renovated for full-day kindergarten. They would include toilets and complete re-renovation of the rooms, flexible furniture, to be able to allow these spaces to, again, meet the curriculum for a full-day kindergarten. Again, another alternative of what these rooms could look like, how they could be housed, chairs on wheels, tables on wheels, reconfigured, can be reconfigured into group spaces or open spaces, as any new kindergarten would be able to do. At Crim, the block on the upper left is the kindergarten area. There's also a small group instruction room on the lower right, and then these are what we would, very similar renovations at all the schools to create equity. So again, the flexible furnishings, the toilets where they're needed. There's an OT-PT space, that's the small group room. And then again, images of what these spaces could look like. Hamilton, similar renovations at Hamilton. Again, these are the spaces, these are the layouts, and this is what those spaces could look like. Primary colors, bright, inviting, flexible for the staff and students and curriculum. JFK Primary, very similar renovations. Again, very similar in terms of the layouts and spacing, creating flexibility in the classrooms and what those spaces could look like. Milltown, very similar. Autism MD room, kindergarten classrooms, new added toilet rooms in all, what they could look like. Van Holten Primary, those are the spaces in the upper right. This is just a blow-up of those same spaces, kindergarten, 3 kindergarten classrooms, additional toilet rooms, and what they could look like. So let's talk a little bit about the estimated tax impact for this question in November. Based upon the average assessed homes, the total operating cost that needs to be added and adjusted is $2.4 million, or $2,460,000. for the average assessed home in Bridgewater, that results in a one-time $53.24 increase per year. There is for Raritan, that increase is $41.63. It is a one-time increase over the life of per year, and that's for Raritan. So based upon the average assessed home, those are the tax impacts. Those will support the annual operating costs necessary to support the program. So we try to break down your vote to let you know exactly what it means and what you'll get. So if you vote yes to this question, we're going to pass the $2.4 million operating cost. However, there's more tied to this. You will get all of the work I just walked through, the addition at the middle school, which allows for freeing up space in the primary schools to allow for the full-day kindergarten. So that's what you'll get if you vote yes. If you vote no to this, the existing facilities are going to remain as they are. The district will not have the monies to support the operations for a full-day kindergarten. And the addition and renovations that were already approved by the public in March will not go through. We will not be able to do them because you can't build the building that you don't have the teachers and the operational costs to be able to do. So it's critical that everyone understand why these two are tied together. And that's really the crux of what this vote is here in November. It's about the operating costs and making it possible to have the teachers and everything necessary to make the March vote come to fruition.
Thanks. Thank you, Frank. So finally, it's been a few years in the making, but we are at that moment. We have a vote coming up in a week, and we're asking voters for their voice on funding this program. So the process over the past few years has been transparent from the start. Community surveys, community focus meetings, multiple presentations. Saying multiple, Frank has probably done about 50 of them. Mailings, and I see some of the folks have the postcards that hopefully were received this past week. Multiple communications with our constituents via email, personal phone calls, etc. And look, we know that there's nothing more transparent than a public question where we are asking the entire community to weigh in with a yes or no vote. It's the definition of transparency. So once more, we believe that enhanced middle school programming and full-day kindergarten will lead to generational change in this district for the positive. And I want to finish by saying I'm proud of the Board of Education, grateful for the leadership of my colleagues, and for the leadership of our partners at Solutions Architecture. And now I'd like to open up the floor to questions or comments from the public. And I guess we can work this where the public can come to the podium here, and we'll sit back there and answer questions.
Before you do that, do you want to open it up to board members for questions, or
Absolutely.
does any board member have?
I'm hesitant to take anyone's question.
Okay.
For the public, ask it myself. But.
All right, if no one else has questions. All right. Then I'm going to read a brief statement. We're going to open up to public comment. On referendum issues only, individuals and/or groups are invited to present their concerns, comments, and requests and questions regarding the following action items to the Board of Education at this time. That action item being the referendum only. In accordance with the board policy, members of the public are allotted one opportunity to address the board at this time for a maximum of 5 minutes during this period of the meeting. Please be advised that a video recording of this meeting will be posted on the district's website, and we ask that you do state your name and district residence for the record as well.
Hi, I'm Teresa Lanudo. And what was the second part? I couldn't hear. Oh, I'm in Bridgewater. Okay. Okay, good. Thank you for this presentation, and thank you for all your hard work that's been put into it for the last 3 years. I want to say thank you for that. And I just have one question. You pretty much answered the questions that I had in the presentation. Thank you very much. I just want to say, and I have my sample ballot with me. come prepared, where it says, "These proposed additional expenditures, in addition to those necessary to achieve the New Jersey student learning standards." Okay, it says, "Approval of these taxes will result in a permanent increase in the district's tax levy." What does that mean?
So those are the taxes that support the school budget. So each year, you get levied taxes for the support of the school budget.
Okay, so it's pretty much like you were saying with the estimated amount that's going, that one-time amount. That's what this is referring to in the ballot, right?
Yes.
That, say it's that 5324 one-time increase per year, if I'm understanding it right.
It's more specifically talking about the 2.4 million. So, right, our total tax levy that we get from both communities, let's say, is $150 million. This makes it $152.4 million.
Okay,
And that's the tax levy.
that's a tax levy, and does that have any implications, I guess, to the taxpayers?
That, what you just read about the $52, that's the implication to the taxpayers.
Okay, that's the only implication then, would be that one-time increase that would happen per year.
Yes, your taxes
Going
would go up
forward.
$52, I believe it was, and then it levels off. That 52 remains in your taxes,
Going forward?
going forward.
Okay, good, thanks. And then the 15 teachers, are those all for the kindergarten that were put in the proposal?
That's correct.
Those
So,
are-
so the way we came up with this number is as follows. With the leadership of Dr. Fonder, we took a look at the number of faculty members that we have in the current first grade and subtracted the number of teachers currently that we have in kindergarten, because it is approximately 50% of our student population goes to half-day kindergarten. So we utilized that number to come up with 15. So I don't know, Dr. Fonder, if you want to.
Yes, that's a good explanation of it. We have a half-day kindergarten program, so each of our kindergarten teachers teaches 2 classes, and so obviously we would need double, but it's actually a little bit more than double, and that's what Mr. Beers was saying, because some of our students don't attend our half-day kindergarten program, they attend a full-day program somewhere else, and so using the first grade numbers presumes, which has been true over time, that most of the children who would come to first grade in the district would come to kindergarten if it was a full-day program.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. And then what about the aides and such? Is that included, or that's in addition to the 15 teachers? Would there be teachers' aides? Like, is that budget? I think the proposed budget has also that in there, right? For the aides as well, the additional.
Right. We don't have those marked out in here, but we'd be able to support the teacher assistants necessary. There are teacher assistants who work with our current kindergarten program, and so we'd have those individuals. The biggest expense will be the teachers in more than doubling the number of kindergarten classes that we have for all the students.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking at my notes. Make sure I got my questions answered. Okay. Yep, that's it. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Those were great questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lunito. And I've been asked to remind people that you can also email questions to the email address that's on the referendum website.
Correct. It's referendum at brrsd.k12.njus.org.
Hello, Rebecca Hasuna, 557 Lime Rock Road in Bridgewater. My only question is, I've heard rumors that this is the tip of the iceberg, and I was just wondering, are there any other costs that might come up? Are you going to come back to the taxpayers next year and say, we need another $50 every year? What else can come up from this, or has everything ideally been thought of?
There is absolutely no plan to go to the taxpayers again for any added cost to kindergarten. With the plan we've put forward, It's a great question, first of all, I want to say. And again, with the folks we have around us, you know, Dr. Fonder, Ms. Jones, myself, Mr. Stars, and our team, we are certain that these are the costs that we need to make this a reality in 2026.
Perfect. We've been waiting for this for 20 years, so
That's what I heard.
I'm hoping. My kids are 20.
Mrs. Lochran it says they were talking about her when she was in elementary school.
Sorry, I just thought of one. JP Levin, 491 Knollwood Drive. Once again, thank you so much for the presentation. It's a good added value to the community. I just wish it was done maybe before early voting and so forth. But one of the questions, I mean, the young lady asked a bunch of questions that I think were good, and then you asked a very important question. Thank you. With the full-day kindergarten that's proposed and all the additions and so forth, and then with Governor Murphy's initiative and agenda that I think he's calling for 2030, I think it is, for a full-day pre-K statewide. How is, basically, are all of these additions that we're going to be making, does that also come into play why we're doing this?
So let me can I just repeat what I think you're asking, and that is, are we doing these additions in anticipation of full-day pre-K?
Possibly. Was that a possible thought in that?
It wasn't. What we're looking to do is deliver the product that we described, and that's full-day kindergarten. Obviously, full-day pre-K is a program that's been started by a lot of surrounding districts. And that
Not many, but yes. Not many, but yes.
And right now, it's full-day pre-K is not a reality for a district with our demographics, right? Our socioeconomic status does not qualify us for the full-day pre-K program. So again, to come back and answer your question, that really didn't have, that didn't have any influence on what we were proposing.
And then with the funding that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. Now, with the funding with this, from my understanding, I could be totally wrong with this, is that some of what Governor Murphy's initiatives and agendas are, a lot of this had to be already in place, like what we're doing now, by a certain time to receive fundings, and then also make room for the statewide pre-K, which, once again, I'm not so certain of the years, but I think it has maybe 2030, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that.
So I'm just going to step in real quick because
Yeah.
I don't think that our administration should really be speculating as to something that isn't passed yet and isn't a certainty. So I mean, we're currently looking to have full-day kindergarten
No, I
in
understand.
our district. That's the focus of the administration and of our referendum. I mean, if something comes down the pike, we can't plan now for something that isn't yet coming.
And what is the projected kindergarten population going to be when this is all completed?
It would be equivalent to our current first, second, and third grades in those.
Which is what? I don't.
You're really bouncing somewhere between, the mid 500s to 600, right in that territory.
All right, so with that said, over the past many years, our student enrollment has gone down significantly. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was actually mentioned by like 600-700 students within the last like maybe 9 to 10 years or so. That's a full class size. Is there a possibility, and I've asked this question many times before, is there a possibility that we can still implement full-day kindergarten, which, you know what, it's like, I mean, I have my own personal opinions on that one, and I'm not going to mention that. I mean, full-day kindergarten is a good thing, right? But is there a possibility that we could still implement it without these additions? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you said you've exhausted
No.
all of, and you said, your answer is no.
That's the
Did you
answer.
exhaust all other options and possibilities? I've been asking that actually for a
Oh,
while.
sure, and the answer remains the same, and it's a good question, but the answer does remain the same. We took a look at our buildings.
But you never made them, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, I'll let you go, and then I'll answer the question.
But I asked,
And I'm trying to answer you.
even before, I asked, can you make that public? What were those other possibilities?
So, right now, this is a public forum on the vote coming up
Right,
Tuesday
I
for
understand.
full-day kindergarten. And I know you have some disagreements with it, and that's fine. What I could tell you is we've gone through the process that started before I got here, and decisions were made that in order to deliver this program in the most effective way for our whole district, that we propose this plan that's in front of the voters right now. That was the decision, and one of the issues, if I may, is that one of the reasons that, actually the major reason why we chose to do a middle school addition is as follows. We have sites in our district that you can't add on to. If you go over to Hamilton School, you can't add on to that. There are other buildings, there's no area to build. And I'm sorry if I'm stealing you.
No, I mean,
thunder, Fred.
I agree with you with
So
that because
the
the
site
structure you
management
can't build up either.
becomes impossible. So the most cost-effective way, right, and that's important, we're looking for taxpayer dollars. One of the reasons why we made that decision was the cost to do additions at all 7 primary schools would be higher, and then we weighed that along with, all right, efficiency plus enhanced programming for kids at the middle school. Let's remember the flip side of this is that we're enhancing the program and the experience for kids in our middle school, being a 6, 7, and 8 school.
That was a
which is consistent.
byproduct.
Correct.
That was a byproduct of the initial initiative
It's all together.
of a full-day kindergarten. I understand that.
Yep.
But what I'm asking is, like, you say that you exhausted it, but with the constant decline in enrollment, go ahead.
So when we put this plan together, as Mr. Beers said earlier, this is a plan that goes back a couple of years. In spite of a decline in enrollment, the reason for the need for additional classroom space is because class sizes have changed. Small group instruction now requires or limits the size of kids in the classroom. So you can no longer put 24 kids in every classroom. Now you have sometimes we have 6 kids in a classroom. So it's in spite of the fact that enrollment's declined, we now can't put as many kids in a classroom that we previously were. So there's a net effect and offset in terms of the amount of kids that we can still put in a building. When we looked at additions at the primary schools for the purpose of full-day kindergarten, it became incredibly cost specific. It was a lot more cost to put additions at 7 buildings, 7 general conditions, several overheads, as opposed to looking at one location that would allow us to put an addition, free up space by pulling grade level out of each of those primary schools and allow us to fulfill the need for full-day kindergarten and yet build an addition at the middle school that creates now a traditional 6, 7, 8 middle school, which we used to have here, quite frankly.
And I was a
So-
product of that.
So when it comes down to, increasing the enrollment, I'm sure the district can look at what it would take later on to do pre-K. The last thing that I would say is that the Department of Ed will not allow approvals, will not approve projects based on speculation or assumption. We get a lot of times where there's housing projects being in the pipeline, and they're like, well, how are you going to accommodate all these kids? If those projects are not approved, DOE will not allow us to get a project approved to accommodate something that may never happen. So to the pre-K question, if it's not currently a state mandate, and it's not, if it's not currently a state mandate, DOE will not
The
approve.
kindergarten's not a state
Yeah,
mandate either.
No, but DOE won't approve us putting an additional space if it doesn't warrant it in the plan that the district had, and it wasn't in our original plan.
So there is a possibility that
based on
if Governor
pre-K.
Murphy gets this initiative rolling with teeth in it, with, traction, I mean, he'll be out of office by then, right? We might be going through all this one more time. There's that
I
possibility.
don't have a crystal
No,
ball, so
I know.
I couldn't tell you, but
All right,
yes.
thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm Margaret Tharp. I live in Bridgewater. A couple of questions. I do not understand, first of all, I think the plan is great, okay? And I understand that we're not here to debate the plan that was already approved, but I think it's great anyway. But I don't understand why, if this referendum fails, you'd have to throw the entire plan out the window. I mean, you could still do this construction in anticipation of getting another referendum to approve the additional teachers when you're ready to actually hire them, and still have the benefit to the middle school and so forth. Why are you putting it out as, everything that was approved in March will go out the window if this referendum doesn't pass?
Okay, so that's a great question. And the decision was made to tie questions 2 and 3 together for this reason, and we hinted at it a little bit before. But the absolute worst case scenario for the district and for all of us would be to approve construction. So you build all of these classrooms for millions of dollars, and then you don't have the people to staff the classrooms.
Immediately.
Yeah, so in order to move forward, as stewards of taxpayer dollars, we've got to make sure that the community is 100% on board with this initiative, right? We can't leave that to chance, because you could imagine what the flip side of this equation would be is if you built a whole addition and you had no teachers to put in it. So that is the reason why those questions are linked, and I understand where you're coming from, but the Board of Education,
Well,
myself.
you're not actually
Oh, I'm sorry.
building onto the elementary schools, right? You're converting some classrooms. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay. But you are building onto the middle school, and that will give us a 6, 7, 8 middle school, which has wonderful advantages. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. So it would seem like if this referendum did not pass, you could build onto the middle school, get all those advantages, and then have another referendum, which, if it passed, would allow you to equip the space that you've now freed up in the elementary schools. And in the meantime, if the enrollment changes, for example, if you had a different need for that space, you would be able to utilize it. It seems a little bit artificial to make it such an all or nothing kind of a deal. It kind of puts pressure on the population who's voting.
Sure.
In a way that seems a little bit artificial.
What I can say, and respectfully, I actually think it's the opposite versus artificial. What we're asking for is approval from taxpayers for both the bricks and mortar, so that was approved back in March, and now the staffing. So now with both of those together, we could say the Bridgewater-Raritan communities are in full support of this initiative, and we can move ahead. You really can't do it without both, right? And I know we may disagree on that.
You can't do what without both?
Well, you can't move ahead without both, because question 2 is asking for tens of millions of dollars from taxpayers.
Question 2 is the referendum?
The referendum back in March. And that's the middle school edition. So in order to move forward with that, we've got to make sure that everything is operational when it opens.
I see. Okay, I don't necessarily agree with you, but I hear what you're saying.
Okay. Thank you.
When I apologize if you presented this in the original presentation earlier, which I missed. When will the full-day kindergartens become operational in your current plan?
The target date is September 2026.
Okay, so that is basically 2 years from next September, correct? And in the meantime, you're
Correct.
going to be collecting this additional, you're going to have this additional money in the school budget, which you're collecting from the taxpayers. I have never understood why you are starting to collect the money so far in advance of when you actually need it for the purpose that you have stated you're collecting, for which you're collecting it.
So again, what you're saying is correct. The approval of this question is going to add $2.46 million to the budget. And then for 2 years, we have a lag until the kindergarten opens.
Right.
That is correct. And it does go back to what we had discussed before, that we needed 100% approval from the taxpayers to move forward with this. And it really comes down to that same question. We needed approval to move forward, and the construction of that building is going to take approximately 2 years.
Right, but you could have put into the referendum that this increase in our taxes will take an effect shortly before September of 2026, when you actually need it. I feel like what you've said to us is, approve this for the teachers, but we don't really need the teachers right now, and trust us, we're going to use this money in some unforeseen, in some way that you have not reported to us. And that's a lot of money, $2.4 million, right, per year, as I understand it. Why are you collecting $2.4 million per year 2 years before you need it? Collecting, I'm saying. You get the approval.
We're having a circular conversation.
I don't think so.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Stars.
Yeah, so we are not allowed to, this was the time that we were able to do that, to connect it with the referendum. We're not able to formulate a question for taxation for 2 years away for operating budget. So that's why we have to do it now.
And
The question, from our bond counsel who drafted the referendum and the separate proposal question for us indicated that this was the way we had to do it. We could not either wait till 2025 to do it, but we had to do it for this year's budget.
Okay, what are you going to do with that $2.6 million for the next 2 years? What are you going to do with $5.2 million? 2.6 times 2 is 5.2.
Okay, so that's a great question. And again, 100% transparency. The additional funds are going to be earmarked for any additional costs related to preparation for full-day kindergarten. And preparation for full-day kindergarten does impact all of our K-8 schools. We're talking about technology infrastructure, computer network, security, transportation, furnishings, et cetera. The items that it would go to would be one-off items, so to speak, because you can't take that budget line and earmark it towards faculty positions or anything like that that could eat up your budget. So it does have to be something that's set aside and saved for that time when we need it to commit to the 17 faculty members that we described before.
So what was approved in March doesn't actually cover all of the anticipated contingencies in getting these classrooms ready, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's just strictly capital issues. This is the operating portion of that.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stark.
Good evening. My name is Neil Curry. I live in Bridgewater, just down the street. My mind works much better out of the millions category, and it's kind of I'm a product of the Bridgewater school system, so I think simple. And the simple question is, maybe there isn't a clear answer, but an estimate maybe. How much does it cost us to educate those 600 students per student? The operating cost.
believe as a district, and Peter, it's in our user-friendly budget that's posted every year.
Okay.
It's in the neighborhood of $18,000 per pupil.
And that's the total student population?
Yeah, total student population, we're looking at a per pupil cost. We're right in the neighborhood of $18,000. But that's posted every time we have a budget hearing, and it's there. So again, as far as kindergarten goes, when you look at that per pupil cost, you're generally in that neighborhood.
Is it safe to assume that the per kindergarten student cost today is less than half of what it will be when it's full-time?
So let me just understand the question. What you're asking is the cost per pupil?
Yeah, cost per student in the kindergarten. Today, you mentioned that there are less students going to the kindergarten program because they're going to full-time outside of the
Correct.
school. The cost today per student, operating costs, not the operating costs, about how much? It's not 18,000, that's for sure.
For students, like were there half a day?
Yeah, they're half a day.
So is it half that, or is it more than that?
Okay. And the 2,400,000, which is in the proposal, that's primarily for kindergarten, operating costs?
It's entirely for kindergarten.
Entirely. So that's $4,000 per student. Okay? That's in addition to what it costs today. Okay, so it will cost us, as we look at the students going on the school bus, another $4,000 for each one going to kindergarten.
Yeah. I don't know if that's accurate because we're talking about two different calculations. What we can say is that with the anticipated number of students entering the system full day, it will cost the taxpayers $2.46 million additional dollars.
Okay, and there are 600 in the class. That's $4,000 in addition per each student.
But the question, the 2.4 million, not only includes per student costs, it includes transportation costs, it includes custodians, it includes, there's other things that were mentioned in the beginning as to what that 2.4 million includes. It's not just a simple calculation per the number of students.
But the transportation is basically the same, right? You have 2 buses a day.
The transportation costs would rise because we're adding additional students. And again, there's multiple layers to that. We would have to get additional bus runs because with the half-day program, we can tier our buses where there's actually a middle or a fourth run, so to speak,
Okay,
where drivers at 11 o'clock take kids home and pick others up, where now we've got to add routes at the beginning and at the end of the day because we won't be able to transport students in the middle.
okay,
So it's a net gain of X amount of routes.
I understand. But the total 2,400,000 is additional operating cost. And we're looking at a total population of 600 in the kindergarten. Is that correct? I just want to kind of put my
That's correct.
head around. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Sure. Come on up.
My name's George Bateman, Bridgewater. I was reading your postcard that we got in the mail, and it mentions that I think it's referring to the bond question, that the change provides additional access to effective instructional programming and increased extracurricular opportunities for elementary, middle school students, intermediate, and 6th to 8th middle school structure. So does this public question on November 7 include any extracurricular opportunities and programming for the other schools? Or was that part of the original bond? Did we originally, in our other public questions, fund extracurricular opportunities, increased opportunities in educational programming?
So again, the programming that we're talking about is specific to the middle school, and we'll see it later in the testing report. We have some hard data that really demonstrates how critical it is to have consistent delivery of curriculum once you reach a certain age. All right, obviously it's critical at every age, but you see once students are really getting into that grade band of 6, 7, and 8, where you're preparing for high school, you start to get into accelerated tracks, et cetera. The continuity in programming from being in a single location is advantageous. What it also provides with these 6th graders coming up, they have access to programs that we're currently running. Right, so we're going to open the doors even a little wider to allow 6th graders to participate, whether it's athletics, extracurriculars, et cetera. And those are opportunities that they don't have at this moment. So, I mean, that's part of it. So as far as additional costs for the extracurriculars, there's nothing significant, right? Because, again, the vast majority of these programs are already in place, and we're looking at stipend positions. But you really do get the opportunity by having kids throughout the district from one grade under one roof, where, for instance, I could tell you this year, just to go into what the Board of Education supported for the middle school, we started a boys and girls volleyball team, boys and girls soccer team. So now those are opportunities for our current 7th and 8th graders that we intend to expand to the 6th graders when that shift happens. So it's just more of an opportunity we know how critical it is for kids to be engaged in activities after the school day.
Right.
And whether it's athletics, arts, music, co-curricular activities, we intend to expand that to the entire 6th grade, giving them that opportunity.
Okay, I understand. So was that part of the bond, or was that part of this?
It's actually part of the specific costs aren't in either question.
Okay.
Right, it's just from, by us reworking the system and changing where the grades are located, it allows us to offer these opportunities. Dr. Fonder.
And I was just going to add, a little bit more context. Is at our high school, we have the most extracurricular and co-curriculars. At the middle school, there's fewer, but there's a lot there as well. At the intermediate schools, we have some of them there, and at the primary schools, we have very, very few relative. So by shifting the grades up, the 6th graders now will have the same opportunities that our 7th and 8th graders have currently, which was what Mr. Beers was saying. So it's not necessarily an added cost, but it's an added opportunity for those students. And then right now at our intermediate schools that are 5th and 6th grade, those opportunities will now be available to 4th and 5th graders. And so more students will have more opportunities. There isn't really necessarily an added cost that goes in that, but there is an added opportunity with the grade shift.
I see.
Just more kids, I imagine, would help a lot of those programs run even better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great question.
I'm going to close that portion of public comment. Thank you all for participating and for your very insightful questions that have given us all a lot to think about, and we really appreciate it. I also want to thank Mr. Beers and Mr. Messinio for providing us the forum and the opportunity and the information. Thank you.
No one asked my question. Do you mind if I jump in? Is there anything
We forgot to
from-
open it up
That's
to
okay. I know
board
we did
members
at the
at
end,
this
or
point.
we weren't doing it. Is there anything from question 1 on the referendum that's at stake in this vote? The overall work that's being done, or that's already underway for the facilities? Is that
No.
air conditioning, restrooms? Is any of that in jeopardy from the result of this question?
No.
Okay.
So that's the short answer, and Mr. Stars in his reports tonight, we are putting multiple items out to bid as we speak, and question 1 is progressing fairly rapidly at this point.
And I guess my second question that I've heard from a few people, in terms of full-day kindergarten, the amount of time in the classroom, the amount of time working with teachers, the amount of instruction, can we expect that to, it may not be exactly double, but should most, as the day expands, children will receive twice as much instruction and opportunities to learn. Is that more or less correct? I'm sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Not
thought
that it
so.
would be exactly that, but
Right.
But that's a great question, Mike. And you know, one of the things that I don't think I went into enough depth in the presentation. We have to know that when we talk about equity, right? We say, who benefits from full day kindergarten? Well, specifically, some special needs children benefit the most from full day kindergarten. All right. Economically disadvantaged kids benefit the most from kindergarten. All right. And a lot of kids that we're going to see later in our testing report when we look at subgroups. So, in other words, this initiative for full day kindergarten, the largest bang for the buck, so to speak, comes for the most vulnerable amongst us. And when we talk about equity, that's really what it is. Whereas a community, we've got to decide if those kids are worth it, if our kids are worth it. All right, so what I've talked about, I consider myself to be an equity advocate because I've built a career on this. We've got to make sure that we have a system, right? Not Mike and the public. I don't want you to think I'm yelling at you. But as we've talked, it's really, right, and that's why I believe so strongly in this, that we have to have a system where on day one, kids who walk in our doors have the same opportunities. So think about the system now. We have some kids who have full day. We have some kids who go outside of district. We have some kids who go in district to half day. We have some kids whose parents pay for full day. So within that, you've developed a system of inequity by not providing the full day product. All right, so now what happens is in those formative years, think of that, 5-year-old kids, we're developing gaps before they come into first grade. All right, and not that I'm saying it's the panacea for everything, but you're also going to see with full day kindergarten, you're going to have fewer CST referrals. You're going to have fewer needs for intervention. And when we look at some of the initiatives that the district has undertaken, one specifically with early childhood literacy led by Ms. Jones and Candy Mulligan, right, where we're really hitting phonics in a systemic way at an early age. I mean, these kids are going to take off with a full day program. And I truly believe it's going to be a different place. And you're not going to measure that just in 1 year. You're going to measure that in 1 year, 5 years, 8 years, 12 years. And that's really what the question is about, right? It's not about full day kindergarten. Well, I paid for my kids, so everyone. It's about the 5-year-olds or those young families in your neighborhood, right? Are those kids worth it? And in the long run, it's probably a more cost-effective solution than intervention, CST, and all these other things that end up coming in because of the lack of program at that critical age. I'm sorry. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Hey, that answer is great. I'm sorry.
No, that was good because that's what I wanted to say. But also, if you look at standards, we have standards, as you know, across all the content areas. And so in kindergarten, you have to actually meet the standards for English language arts and math. And so the rest of the standards, when you look at science, social studies, art, music, they're banded together, so you have to meet them by the end of second grade. So if we don't have time in kindergarten to teach all the different areas, what's going to happen is you're going to focus obviously on English and math because you need to meet those standards, and some of those other standards are going to get really pushed into first and second grade. So it also impacts the instruction that you have in subsequent grades as well. Whereas once you have full day kindergarten, you're able to, kind of move that the curriculum and start teaching to some of those standards right in kindergarten. And it's not that we don't do it at all, it's just that there's very little time to do it actually right now.
And also a kid who loves art or science or music.
That's
That
right.
makes-
And
that's
what
the
do you
reason they wanna
right?
come
Think
to
about
school, they
that. Just
have
think
that
about
from
the
an early age.
experience for a young child. That's right.
Makes a difference.
I guess instructionally, how did it play out? So now all the kids that fully kindergarten in first grade, everyone would be on the same level. How does that? You explain it instructionally in the classroom how that would work. So if all the kids have full day kindergarten, some into first grade, that's a lot of differentiated instruction previously with a half day, full day, and some without kindergarten. How will that first grade look a little different?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I'd like to think that you're going to have less differentiation that you have to do at the beginning. I mean, you're always going to have some differentiation because students are at different places on the continuum. But right now, when we look across our kindergartens, and this isn't an exact, I can't tell you this exactly, but what I can tell you is when you look at our different schools, the cohort that grows from kindergarten to first grade is there's less of a growth in some of the schools, which makes us assume that the kids who start there in kindergarten half day continue. And then in other schools, we see like 105% increase from kindergarten to first grade, which means there's a whole different experience going in. So you're right, you're starting off the beginning of the year with kids at very different levels of experience, and I think that's what Mr. Beers was just saying. You're leveling the playing field, and you're going to start off with a larger cohort of kids who we made decisions about, their kindergarten education and instruction. So, I'd like to think we'll lose less time in the beginning of the year in moving kids forward.
I just wanted to close it out by having a little trip down memory lane. I think Peter and Barry were the only two here, but almost 10 years ago to the day, I stood in front of this Board of Education as a parent and as a first grade teacher and asked for full day kindergarten. I had an experience just not as a parent and seeing what was happening to my own child in a half day program, but the experience as a first grade teacher who at the time was also teaching in a half day kindergarten district. I can't begin to tell you how happy I am to see us here today having this conversation and this presentation. I just wanted to thank our architects and Mr. Beers for your support, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stacy. And you're right. It's so important to recognize that the work for this project started before I got here 2.5 years ago. So, there was a vision from this Board of Education, and I'll come back to what I started off with. It started with a community survey, and this was at the top of the list. So as a governing body, it's our mission to meet the needs of our constituents who let us know at that moment what they were looking for. And I think it's a great plan. Again, Stacy, thank you for your support. And it's really been a team effort. And we're excited, and we just want to encourage everyone to please go out and vote. Tell your friends to go out and vote. And that's it.
Thank you for reminding me to open it up to our questions. Appreciate that. Closed session at this time?
Yes.
All right. So unfortunately, or fortunately, we need to go into closed session at this time to discuss personnel. So whereas discussion by the board is required on matters that are exceptions to the requirement that a public body hold its meetings in public, and whereas the topics for discussion are personnel, whereas it is expected that the details of the discussion may be made public as soon as the issues may be acted upon publicly, be it resolved that the board enters into closed session at this time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion passes. We are in closed session.
And what are we looking at? 15 minutes, most likely? 10 to 15?
I couldn't tell you.
What do you think, Dr. Fronek? 20? All right. See, I'm always optimistic on the low end.
Calling the meeting back to order. Thank you for your patience. We appreciate you staying around. We are up to item number 8, the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Singer. So enclosed in the board packets are the Student Safety Data Report, SSDS, which outlines HIB events throughout the school year, also suspensions and really major incidents that we had in our schools over the past year. So that is there for the board to take a look at. And I can open it up if there are any questions on that now before we get to Mr. Mariello.
Any questions on the SSDS?
And again, that's a report that it's based on data that we submit to the state of New Jersey. And, these are items that we spoke about over the past year that we did see a rise in events that obviously we don't want to happen in our schools. And that's one of the reasons why we really took some time to go through the code of conduct. And when the high school administration comes to present next month on the 14th, one of the things that I've asked them to do is to really take a look at disciplinary referrals, suspensions, et cetera, and HIBs, and we're doing a month-to-month comparison to see where we stand this year versus last year. So when Mr. Hemberger and his team come to present in November, we will be past the first marking period, so we can take a real sample of where we are after a quarter of the school year versus last year. Okay. So now I would like to turn this over to Jason Mariello, who is going to deliver our district data report. And Karen, do we want to let Jason go through the whole report and then save questions for the end? Versus, okay. Only you're allowed to? Okay. Thank you.
All right, are we on here? Yep. All right. All right, thank you. So I'm Jason Moriello. So this is part 2 of our standardized assessment results from last school year. A couple months ago, actually over the summer, we did part 1, which was really mostly the NJ GPA and the access results. And we're required to do this based on a certain time frame from when the results are released. So that's why we did those assessments at that time. Now we have some additional assessments that have been released. So we have the DLM, NJSLA, and we also have AP results and SAT results that we'll be going over. So the agenda for what we're going to be discussing is first the purpose and the context of this data presentation. Then we'll kind of go over some, just in general, some highlights that we noticed from the data. Then we'll actually get into the assessments themselves. We'll start with the dynamic learning map, which is the DLM, then the NJSLA, New Jersey Student, I'm going to forget it now, New Jersey Student Learning Assessment, right, for English Language Arts, Math, and Science. And then we have AP exams, we'll go into SATs, then we'll do our key takeaways from all of the data that we saw, and then what actions have we put into place based off of this data, and even from previous data that we've looked at, and then we'll close out just by looking at the assessment calendar for this upcoming school year. All right, so purpose and context. So really the goal of this presentation is just to show the assessments, the state assessments that we've had, DLM and JSLA, show the results of how we performed as a district, also go into AP results and SAT, and look at how our district performed last school year, and that's part of a requirement by the State Department of Education. Also, all of these results are used by teachers, they're used by administrators to really continually make adjustments in both program and instruction and to really find the best ways to support our students and help them reach their full potential. So some of the highlights, what are you going to see in this presentation? You'll kind of see some recurring themes. And if you remember last year at this time, it was the first year that we had standardized assessment results post-COVID. All right, so obviously during COVID, we all kind of know things, weren't the same post-COVID as they were pre-COVID. And last year when we got the results of the standardized assessments from 2 years ago, it was kind of like figuring out our new baseline, like what's our new starting point, because it wasn't the same as it was prior. So what's nice now is now we have a second year's worth of data. So now we can actually look to see, all right, based on that baseline that we were at kind of 2 years ago, that first year's worth of data post-COVID, now we can see how we're doing. Are we making improvements in the areas that we want to? And the theme that you're going to see is really across the board. You're going to see for the NJSLA overall performance across all the assessments, math, English, science, there's improvements overall from the previous year. Same thing when we get to AP, when we get to SATs, you're seeing improvements from the previous year. So that's a nice kind of theme that you're going to be seeing across the board. Another thing that you're going to notice is that when we compare ourselves to the state and when possible, like national averages, you're going to see once again, Bridgewater-Raritan Regional School District is outperforming the state really in every area, in every grade level, on every assessment. So once again, those are some nice highlights that you'll be seeing as we go through. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first one we're going to talk about is the DLM. So the DLM is a little bit different than the others because this is the dynamic learning map. This is really an alternative assessment to the NJSLA for students with more cognitive disabilities. So it's very few students compared to the size of our district who take this assessment. The eligibility is determined by the case managers. It's given to students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 for ELA and math. And also for science, it's given in grades 5, 8, and 11. So it mimics the exact same grade levels as NJSLA, but this is meant for students who have more cognitive disabilities. So this is really the alternative to the NJSLA for those identified students. And then there's 4 categories that students can perform in, going from emerging to advanced. So here are the results combined for all of the grade levels. So you can see English language arts, then mathematics, and then science. If you look at the bottom, underneath the bars in our bar graphs here, you'll see in parentheses an N equals number. So you'll see that on pretty much all the charts as we go through the presentation. So that is the total population of students in that bar. So for English language arts, there were 33 students who took this assessment across the district in English language arts, 31 in math, and 13 in science, because remember, science is only a couple of those grade levels. And then you can see the results. What's interesting about the DLM is that when students perform at the at-target or advanced levels, that's the top 2, the yellow or the gray bars at the top, typically then they would be reevaluated by the child study team to see if the DLM is appropriate or if they should actually be moved on to take the NJSLA, because this is really meant as an alternative to the NJSLA. So once students are at target or advanced on the alternative, they would then move to take the actual NJSLA. Right? So it's kind of like the access, where once students get to a certain level, they don't take this assessment anymore.
Is that an automatic thing or on a case-by-case?
That's a case-by-case.
Okay.
Yep. So here are the results for the past 2 years, because like I said, we're going to be looking at a lot of 2-year trends now that we have 2 years worth of data on most of our standardized assessments. So you can see English language arts, the first bar is from 21-22, and the second bar is from last year, 22-23. So it's not necessarily the exact same students, because kind of like we said, once you have some students who are in that yellow or gray bars at the top, they might be moved out of that assessment and moved to NJSLA. So you're not really looking for improvement, so to say. This is really meant to be just a snapshot of where the students who are taking this assessment are at that time. Right. All right. And since it is such a small sample size, we really can't do most of the breakdowns, demographics, programs, things like that, because the reporting statute says you need at least 10 students to kind of go into that detail, and we really wouldn't hit 10 students once we do all those individual breakdowns. All right, so we're going to move on to English Language Arts, NJSLA. All right, so this is our New Jersey Student Learning Assessment. We're going to do this for English Language Arts, then we'll do the same thing for math and for science, so it's going to be a similar trend with that. The test was given last May, and all students in grades 3 through 9 took the assessment for English Language Arts and for mathematics. And the categories, the results are in 5 different categories, from level 1, not yet meeting, to level 5, exceeding. So here's the breakdown for each grade level. So you can see grade 3 on the left to grade 9 on the right, and then all the way on the far right, that's the district kind of total. So that's our overall average if you average all of our students together. And once again, you can see those end numbers at the bottom for how many students were in each of the grade level who took the assessment and overall. So it's interesting for the trend for English language arts. As you can see, as the grade levels increase, as you go to the right, you can see kind of the blue and the yellow combined, right, take up more space, right? There's more students in those blue and yellow categories, kind of meaning as students are in the higher grade levels, you have more students performing at those higher levels, right? So that's the trend that we see in language arts. If we look at this next slide, what this does, it really just focuses at those top two levels. So this is the percentage of students who are meeting or exceeding expectations on the NJSLA, and this compares Bridgewater-Raritan's results for each grade level in the blue bars compared to the New Jersey average in the orange bars. So what's, I think, notice, kind of saying what we just said before, if you just look at the blue bars as you go from left to right, you kind of see that increase, right? You see more students performing at a higher level, usually as the grade levels increase, right? And also, when you do the comparisons for each grade level, you see that Bridgewater-Raritan is outperforming the state at each of the grade levels for English language arts. If we want to look at student growth, and this is what we couldn't do last year because we only had the 1 year's worth of data at the time post-COVID, what this does is we're actually looking at the same students over 2 years in a row. So we're looking at the percentage of students who are meeting or exceeding. So for example, the first yellow bar and green bar, those are students who last year were in grade 4 and the previous year were in grade 3. The yellow bar is the percentage of the students when they were in 3rd grade who were meeting or exceeding. And the green bar is those same students, then in 4th grade last year, what percentage were meeting or exceeding then. So really you're looking for, was there growth from 1 year to the next at the grade level. So you can see for that example, grades 3 to 4, you can see there was a 13% growth. 13% more students, and that's the same students over 2 years, were meeting or exceeding in 4th grade compared to 3rd grade, right? And you can see really for English, really across all of your grade levels, you see growth from 1 year to the next, except for grade 8 to grade 9, you do see a little bit of a decrease. But for most of those grade levels, you are seeing that increase, which is what you want to see. And then overall, if you add it all together, you can see all grades went from 67% proficiency to 72% proficiency overall. So 5% increase for our district.
So this growth is something that we're watching because this would be an indication to us that the programs and the interventions that we've put in place over the last several years, we're seeing the impact of those with these outcomes.
Right, and in particular, 3rd to 4th grade, we were kind of talking about phonics. I know that came up even earlier. We'll talk about that a little bit more later when we talk about some of the actions that are in place, but that's when you would start to see some of the impact of that because we've started that over the last couple of years. So you'd start to see that impact. So hopefully we'll continue to see some nice growth.
And Jason, one of the other areas that stands out to me is the grades 6 through 7. So if I have that correct, that's from students who were in 6th grade and then entered the middle school last year for grade 7. They saw a 10% growth.
Correct, in their first year in middle school, correct.
Okay, or 10% growth in the number of students. And I'm sorry I said I wouldn't interrupt, but hijacking it, I think with the size of our district, what we also have to keep in mind are the actual numbers of kids who have gone into different categories. So as Ms. Jones has just said, all right, if between grades 3 and 4, if we had a rise of 13%, we're talking about 70 kids that are now proficient. Right? From 6 to 7, you're talking about 57 kids.
Yeah, who
right?
weren't
These aren't just a
proficient the
couple of
previous
kids.
years. Yeah.
This is a significant number of students who were performing, or were approaching expectations who are now meeting expectations.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just so you know, when we talk about the actions later, this is kind of a high level, just looking overall. We go kind of much deeper. This is looking at kind of the percentage of students at our highest 2 levels, meeting and exceeding. We also took a look at the percentage of students in our lowest 2 levels, and that percentage is decreasing. So not only are there more students, meeting and exceeding, there's less students who need that intervention, need that support as well. Yes, so they're moving probably more towards the approaching, right? Because approaching is kind of in the middle before you get to that. So students who were requiring more interventions, who were like partially proficient, right, are now moving to like the approaching category. Approaching is now moving to, so you're seeing kind of movements in those levels. right, across all those levels. All right, so this is taking a look at just last year's ELA and JSLA results, and this is the race ethnicity breakdown. So this is very similar to what we see with our other standardized assessments. So you see just, the differences between different races and ethnicities and the percentage of students who are meeting expectations within those. So, and this is something that we'll kind of talk about some of the actions later on that, we're really focusing on this and trying to address this because I think every time that I've been giving this presentation, I'm saying the exact same thing about this slide and the next couple of slides. So this is something we're definitely talking about and putting things into action to address. Doing a breakdown by program. Once again, if you look at special education, 504, ELL, that's English language learners, and economically disadvantaged students, right? You see similar trends where those groups are still underperforming compared to our overall average. So same thing, we're identifying certain characteristics, certain programs that, we want to look at the students and see what strategies can we put in place really to help support and to bring these averages up. And we look at a breakdown by gender. Typically, we don't see too much of a difference in gender, but it's interesting to note the females, are outperforming males pretty significantly in JSLA, and this is across the district, grades 3 through 9 combined, to see the 77 to 62% difference. Typically, we don't see too much of a difference, and when we get to looking at math and English, once again, we actually don't see, it's actually flipped a little bit. Males slightly outperform females in science and mathematics, but it's much closer compared to this. So it is something interesting to note and to take a look at. And we'll look at more gender differences when we get to SATs. We do notice some things similar to this. All right, so we're going to move on to math. Math, we're going to do the exact same thing we just did with English. It was given to all students in grades 3 through 9. Using the same categories. What makes math a little bit more complicated is that in English, grades 3 through 9, there's one English course. Everyone in each of those grades takes the same assessment. When in math, the assessment that you take, once you get to algebra, geometry, algebra 2, it's a different assessment, and we have different, you could take algebra 1 in grade 7 or grade 8 or grade 9. So it gets a little bit more complicated. So when you're looking at these bars, and this is where you really need to look at those N numbers, those total populations that are in each group at the bottom. You can see grades 3 through 6, that's our total population. Everyone in grades 3 through 6 takes the same assessment each year in mathematics. Once you get to grade 7, that's where it gets a little bit different, and you can see the drop there. Because in grade 7, students who are 2 years accelerated in math are taking algebra 1. So those students would be in the algebra 1 bar, not the grade 7 bar. When you get to grade 8, we have students who are 2 years accelerated taking geometry, students who are 1 year accelerated taking algebra 1. Those students would be in the geometry and algebra 1 bars. So grade 8 is just the students who are taking grade 8 mathematics, the students who are on grade level. So that's why, once again, you see a little bit more of a dip in the total number of students for that bar. And then you'll see it kind of vice versa as you go up. Algebra 1 actually will be all of our students, because all of our students take Algebra 1 between grades 7, 8, and 9. And once you get to geometry, you're going to see the opposite end, because grade level geometry is grade 10. 10th graders don't take the assessment. So the only students who would be in this geometry bar would be students who are 1 or 2 years accelerated, taking it in grades 8 or 9. And then when you get to Algebra 2, it's even more. The only students in the Algebra 2 bar are your 2-year accelerated 9th graders taking Algebra 2. So you wouldn't get your 10th or 11th grade Algebra 2 students taking this assessment and showing up. So that's where it's a little bit, all the bars aren't representative of the entire population. 3 through 6 is. Once you get past that, there's kind of a lot of other things kind of going on in play. And when we get to this next slide, looking at the comparison against the state, you have to keep the same thing in mind, because our district, Bridgewater-Raritan, has different percentages of students taking Algebra 1 and geometry in grades 7 and 8 and 9 for Algebra 2 compared to the state percentages as well. So it's not really a fair comparison. It's different populations comparing our group cohort of 7th or 8th graders compared to the typical 7th or 8th graders in the state, because most districts in the state don't offer Algebra 1 in grade 7. So all of their students would be taking grade 7 math. So that bar would represent most students in the state, whereas here, our double accelerated students are not represented in that bar. Interesting to note, though, if you when we talked about English, you kind of saw if we just focus on Bridgewater-Raritan, the blue bars here, as the grade levels went up, you kind of saw the percentage of students being meeting expectations or exceeding expectations increasing, those blue bars going up. Here, really looking at grade 3 through 6, you actually see a little bit of a decrease in mathematics, meaning students are more proficient at the younger grades in mathematics compared to the later grades. But if you also look at the trend across the state, the orange bars, you kind of see that same trend with, as you increase from grades 3 to 6, you see those numbers decreasing a little bit as well. All right. If we look at student cohort growth, and then I really like this because you get to really kind of see the same students for multiple years in a row, and really kind of see what's going on. So once again, that first, if we look at grades 3 to 4, that 58% meant in 21-22, so 2 years ago, third graders 2 years ago, 58% of our third graders were meeting or exceeding expectations. Then that same group of students last year when they moved to fourth grade, 67% of those students were meeting or exceeding expectations. So you can see that growth. And if you look for each of the grade levels, you see the growth from third grade into fourth grade. Fourth into fifth is about the same, slight decrease. Same thing with 5 into 6, slight decrease. Grade 6 into 7, you see a 5% increase. Right? Grade 7 to 8, you see a little bit of a decrease. But one thing I did want to highlight is look at the grade 8 to grade 9 Algebra 1. So this is just the students who were 2 years ago grade 8, and then last year grade 9 Algebra 1. So just that cohort of students. Because I know we've had lots of conversations over the years on how is grade 9 Algebra 1 doing. Right, the students who are on grade level. And you look at, if you just looked at the green bar by itself, you're like 34%, only 34%. But look at it in context, right? The prior year, only 22% of our students were meeting expectations. So we're actually seeing some pretty nice growth. Obviously, we want those numbers to improve overall, and in grade 8 as well. And we're having some conversations, regarding that. But it is nice to see that growth because that's pretty significant growth to go from 22% to 34% in 1 year. So we're hoping to see continued increases there. And overall, you do see that there is a 2% increase in our growth in mathematics across the district. Note, there are other cohorts, all of our accelerated cohorts. We didn't put the bars here because pretty much all of our accelerated students are meeting proficient on both years. So you're just going to see bars, in the high 90s across the board. Looking at our breakdown by race and ethnicity, you see very similar results to what we saw with English. Maybe the bars are a little bit farther apart with math between some of the demographic groups than we saw with English. So that's one thing to note, but similar trends. Looking at breakdown by program, very similar to what we saw with English with special education, 504, English language learners, and economically disadvantaged students underperforming compared to our district average. And when we look at a breakdown by gender, much more similar than what we saw with English, with males slightly outperforming females on the math NJSLA. All right, moving on to science. So the science NJSLA is only given in grades 5, 8, and 11, and they only use 4 different levels of proficiency instead of the 5. So you'll just see 4 different levels for the difference. Here's our breakdown by grade level. For grades 5, 8, and 11, you can see the total number of students who took it in each grade level and the distribution. And then overall, you can see the overall average on the right. If we just look at the students who were proficient or advanced proficient, kind of those top 2 levels, you can see kind of the blue bars, once again, are Bridgewater-Raritan. The orange bars are the state. You can see grade 5 and 11, very similar, 46% of students were proficient. Grade 8 was a little bit less with 33%, but you notice that same trend with grade 8 being the lowest of the 3 grade levels across the state as well. So we're kind of following that similar trends. And I do think it's interesting when you look at the overall, right, 41% of students proficient in Bridgewater-Raritan, but 25% across the state. That's the state average. 25% of all students in the state are proficient or advanced proficient in science, meaning 75% are not. So you can think about that for a little bit, and I know they're having some conversations at the county level regarding that. If we look at the breakdown by race ethnicity, very similar distribution from what you saw with the math NJSLA. It was very, very similar. Same thing when we look at the program, special education 504, English language learners, and economically disadvantaged, still underperforming compared to our overall averages. and gender, males slightly outperforming females, but very, very close. All right, so that was our NJSLA results. So now we're going to move on to AP exams. So the AP exams from last year, and actually this table shows the results from the last 2 years. So you can see spring 2022, 2 years ago, compared to spring 2023 last year. And one thing to note, kind of that key trend that we were noticing with kind of those increases, is all 5 of these statistics you see have gone up from 1 year to the next over the last 2 years. The total number of students taking an AP exam, you can see, went up about 87 students. The percentage of the overall population of the high school who took an AP exam went up because the total number went up. Our total number of AP exams taken, you can see, is almost 300 more last year compared to the previous year. The percent of students scoring a 3 or higher on those exams also increased by 5%. So that's something really interesting to see. Not only do we have more students taking the exams, but we had a higher percentage of more students scoring 3s or higher on those exams. So that's really nice to see that. And then overall, if we look at just the graduating class last year, you can see 44.9% of the graduating class took an AP exam and scored a 3 or higher on at least one AP exam. And that's up from about 36% the year before. So some really nice increases looking at just the percentage of students taking and how students are performing on those AP exams. Here's the breakdown for each of the individual exams. So this shows the subject area, the number of students who took the AP test, not the class, but the test, and the percentage of those students who scored a 3 or higher. Notice there are some NAs, because remember the state reporting statute only allows us to share the results if there's more than 10 students for confidentiality reasons. But you can see across the board, you can see the number of students, but if you look at the percentage scoring 3 or higher, pretty much high across the board in most of our subject areas. Well, all of our subject areas, I'll say. Here's the second half of that, the second half of the alphabet. We're going to see similar results, just the number of students who took each test and the percentage of those students who scored a 3 or higher on each of those exams.
Is there a comparison on the state does the AP test?
There is, but they haven't released it yet. So we actually have a comparison for the previous year. So we were higher than the state average on everything, except there were, I think, 1 or 2 exams that we had less than 10 students, and the small sample size was that. But anything that we had more than 10 students take the exam, we were higher than the state average 2 years ago. They haven't released the national averages yet for this year. So, yep. Taking a look at the racial ethnic, so out of the students who took an AP exam, what percent were each race or ethnicity? So you can see just the percentages, still a little bit skewed towards some races, ethnicities compared to others, compared to our overall population kind of breakdown. But I think what's interesting to note is if you look at the right, the percentage of students who score 3 or higher in each of those races and ethnicities, very high across the board. So that means students who are taking the AP exams, regardless of their race or ethnicity, are performing well on the AP exams. So that's my takeaway from this slide. Looking at a gender breakdown, 50-50 right down the middle between males and females in terms of who took an AP exam, and very similar in their scoring with slightly more males scoring 3 or higher than females, 90 to 85%. We're going to shift to SATs now. So looking at SATs, the top table is the EBRW SAT, that's the English, the evidence-based reading and writing, and the bottom table is the math SAT. And once again, it's going to compare 2 years worth of data, last year's, which is the class of 2023, that's that middle column, compared to 2 years ago, the class of 2022, that's the first column, and then just the difference, what was the increase or decrease. And it shows it for Bridgewater-Raritan and the state, and nationally, and the country. So what's of note here is you can see for both English and math, we had a nice increase in Bridgewater-Raritan, a 9-point average increase, and this is the average for about 480 students, 481 students took it last year. So it's not all of our students, but it's a good chunk of our students. And so you can see the average score for English went up by 9, the average score for math went up by 10. But look what happened in the state and in the nation. It's actually going down in the state and going by down even more in the nation. So it's nice to see that we're kind of bucking the trend here. A lot of times we kind of follow the trends with the state. Here we're showing improvements, whereas the state and the nation is still kind of declining a little bit, right? So it's nice to see that trend here. If we look at the distribution by race and ethnicity, out of all of our SAT takers, you can see 481 students took the SAT last year. You can see the breakdown by the different races, and these percentages do much more closely resemble our actual kind of population distribution of the races, ethnicities in our schools compared to any of the other percentages that we saw, like for AP and everything else. So it's nice to see this is more representative of our population. And of note, you can see the average score for the EBRW, which is the English, the evidence-based reading and writing, and the math. And I think this is where, if you look at the differences, I think there's a little bit of a telling story. You can some interesting traits. If you look at the white population, right? If you look at the average English and math scores, 590, 589, about the same for the two, right? Look right above it, Black and African American, 573 to 542. It's a 31-point higher in English compared to math. If you look at Hispanic and Latino, 560 to 542, 18 points higher in English than math. And then look at Asian, 657 to 689, 32 points higher in math compared to English. All right, so you're seeing, based on different demographics, you're seeing kind of those different results in English and math, and strengths and kind of just seeing those differences. So I think that's interesting to note. All right, if we look at our breakdown by gender, all right, very similar, 52% female, 48% male. And if you look at, kind of look at it two ways going across, if you look at female English to math, females are scoring a little bit higher in the English section compared to the math section. And if you look at males, scoring much higher in the math section than the English section. And then if you look at it kind of vertically, comparing female to male, right, in English, right, 613 to 609, pretty similar, with females slightly outperforming males in English. But then look at females to males in math, and males are significantly outperforming females in math, right, on those SATs for those average scores. So once again, things to note, just the differences between the English and the math between the different groups. And some of that kind of follows. We kind of saw some of that with the NJSLA, but not quite to this extent with the math in particular. But once again, not all of our students take the SAT, compared to some of the other assessments where all of our students do take the NJSLA. So that was kind of going into all the detail with all of our data. What are the big takeaways? Looking at NJSLA results across the board in every assessment, math, English, science, in every grade level, we outperform the state. If we look at just the overall, ELA, we outperform the state by 17%. Math, we outperform the state by 17%. Science, we outperform the state by 16%. So I thought it was interesting. It's very consistent across the three levels, kind of where we are compared to the state averages. If we look at SAT results, it was nice to see that we're continuing to see increases in our average scores in both English and math, while you see the opposite trend across the state and across the rest of the nation. So it's nice to see that kind of bucking that trend, disrupting that trend, and moving in the right direction. In AP exams, we saw an increase not only in the number of students who took AP exams, but also an increase in the percentage of students who scored a 3 or higher on those AP exams. So it's nice to see more students taking exams and performing well on that, and performing well across demographics. And we kind of noticed some similarities to what we've seen in previous assessment results. While overall we're showing nice improvement, we're doing very well compared to state averages, there's still some subgroups that are not performing at a comparable level, that are not performing at the overall kind of average level. And that's where a lot of our conversations administratively and as a district have really focused on this year, because we're seeing nice improvements overall, but not everywhere. And that's what we want to focus on. So what actions have we taken regarding this? So we've expanded the ESL program. It's now in all of our schools. And not only have we expanded that, we've also provided a lot of additional resources and targeted professional development for our staff to support that across all of our different schools. We've also expanded our gifted and talented program in the elementary schools to include school-based services. So in addition to just AI, which is at one school at Hamilton, there are now small group investigations, there's cluster groups in each of our elementary schools to provide additional services to meet the needs of our children at each school. At the high school, we're in the process of planning and implementing career concentrations. So next year, we will have in place concentrations, so students who are interested in certain fields not only can take courses towards that, but can also get a little bit more of a feeling of what it's like to be a professional and what is it like to actually go into the workforce in these different fields. So right now we're working on engineering and robotics. We'll have that up and running by September. We already have computer science in place, visual and performing arts are in place, and we're also working on business and rounding that out to be in place for September. Those were the areas that when we surveyed students, they said they were the most interested in pursuing in those fields. Also in the high school in mathematics, we created additional pathways. So instead of just the traditional Algebra 2 kind of going calculus route, we have an integrated Algebra 2 with data science that's going on this year. And that just provides an alternative to your traditional pre-calculus calculus pathway. It brings in a little bit more statistics and will kind of lead students into statistics, AP statistics. We have in the high school also BRHS Structured Learning Lab. So we've identified that there are some students who were failing multiple courses and needed additional support. So that was put in place to basically provide that additional support for the students who needed it. And so far, kind of early on, we're excited to see how the results will be for the first marking period. Also, PSAT was just administered last week to all of our students in grades 9 through 11. We're excited about that because that kind of levels the playing field. Just like SAT, not all of our students took the SAT. It was up to students to kind of pay on their own to take the PSAT. Well, now we provided it to all students, so we're really excited to get those results. Probably early December we should get those results. And for all of our students, part of that PSAT results is also kind of an AP readiness report. So I think there's really going to be a nice opportunity for students who may not have thought of themselves as taking an AP class, now getting reports saying, hey, based on your scores, you're prepared to take some AP classes. And that can really open up opportunities and get people thinking in ways that they haven't in the past. At the middle school, right, there's a schedule. They have that AB schedule for the world language, which also on the opposite day provides dedicated time for intervention and support. So students who, once again, who just need that additional support, need that intervention, now there's dedicated time for it in the school day. We're also training our first cohort of teachers in Orton-Gillingham. So that's a reading program. So really for our students who are at the elementary ages who are kind of struggling with their reading, really providing the training for some of those teachers to really have that understanding on how to support those students with their early reading. We talked about phonics before. We're continuing with our phonics instruction. We've had it in place for a couple of years, and we're hoping to continue to see some nice results at the elementary English results when we looked at that cohort from one year to the next to continue to see improvement. We're also focusing on small group targeted instruction in the classrooms, right, differentiating based on the needs of the students in the classroom. We're continuing to prioritize our social emotional learning. We have a partnership with Rutgers Behavioral Health for the middle and the high school, and we also recently hired a supervisor of K-8 counseling and wellness to work within our district and support that as well. And we're having ongoing discussions about district data regarding equity and opportunities. For all of the data here that we looked at very high level, district level based. We've had meetings with every single principal, every single supervisor where we looked at data specific to their school, to each grade level. For those grade levels, you saw some increases, some decreases. We looked into some of those increases and decreases. We were looking all the way down to the class level data and really trying to drill down and to find out, are there any patterns? What can we do to help support, whether it's teachers, curriculum, instruction, individual students. So we've had a lot of those conversations really starting in the summer when we first get this data. We have those conversations, and now we're able to kind of share just the overall high-level picture here today. So I'll close just with sharing what the calendar is for the rest of this school year. So we already did the NJGPA retake for grade 12. That's for seniors who have not yet met the graduation requirement. That was a couple weeks ago in October. Our access for our ELL students, that's going to be in February and March. The NJGPA, New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment for all 11th graders will be in March, and that is a graduation requirement for all of our students. Then the Dynamic Learning Map for our students with more cognitive disabilities will be in April and May, and our NJSLA will also be in April and May. And that concludes the presentation. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Who's up first? Mike?
It's something specific about science, so if anyone had any general questions, go for it.
You're the first to speak. Go ahead.
All right, thanks. I guess this is less of a question and more of a comment / complaint about the science, because I teach in a grade level, grade 5, that takes the science test. And like I have up right now, the New York State test from last year, the Regents exam. And it's the grade 4 science, so a little bit of a difference, but the same kind of content that we cover in science.
Yep.
And the questions, I mean, there are some more complicated questions as it goes down. But it starts off looking like a test that a 5th grade teacher or 4th grade teacher would give in a science class. A turtle will best be camouflaged when it blanks, swims quickly in the water, and a couple different things. And you figure it out from there. There are questions about basic things about space, important things, but basic things. Who are the producers in the food chain? Things that I guarantee you my students know, and I think I would guess if you gave this test to a 4th grade student in this district, you'd get a lot better passing results than 25, whatever our number was. That wasn't great in the whole state, though. That wasn't great. Then if you go over and look at the New Jersey test, and they don't put, as you may know, they don't release any of their tests, so they've had the same like sample questions for the last decade, which frustrates me. You see, so questions 9 through 10, you have 2 tables. It sets a scenario about at night, a street light appears bigger, and then talks about students who live on those streets, and you have street light X, Y, and Z, and the brightness is different for each one, and the distance from the student is 1, 2, or 3 kilometers away. Then you go and click on table 2, and it takes you to the sun, Arcturus, and Polaris. It tells you about the brightness from Earth and distances from the Earth, and then the questions are 3 complicated questions asking you to go back and forth from those tabs, make sense of all that on a time test. And I guess where I'm going on this, and you mentioned the county's talking about it, is there a chance that just the science test is flawed and we have a bad test? 'Cause
Mike.
I know we have good science teachers. I know kids like science. I can't believe that it's that low. I think the problem, and this is, maybe someone else could speak to this.
Mike,
I think there might be a problem with
I
the
can
test.
speak to it.
Thank you.
The science test, which has been put in place in the state of New Jersey, I mean, gosh, it was a pilot test probably for over a decade. It has been a disaster from the get-go. They are giving an examination that doesn't line up with the state standards. So if you follow the state curriculum, align your curriculum to it, the test they're giving is totally different. So you are correct. And
Maybe if you were in a lab,
Yeah.
this stuff for a practical,
you're
but it's all on the screen.
you are 100% correct. And that's why, really, as a district, not that you say it's not worth any, but folks don't pay attention to the science results because it's just because of what you said. Oh, yeah? Yeah. It's a bad test. Yeah.
And across the state, too. So I just wanted to say that.
You're right. You seem passionate about this, Mike.
No, not at all. Just popped in my
Little frustration.
I've been waiting all night to make that.
I have a quick.
I'm pretty sure the message has been passed multiple times. Yes.
I have a quick question,
Sure.
and I'm sorry if you mentioned it. What influenced the increase in the number of AP test takers?
That's a good question. I don't know specifics of what that is, but it was about, I think we said, 87 more students took an AP exam, and that, was it? Oh, good. I
have an
remember
answer for
correctly.
that.
Good.
We can't. It's leadership. It starts here with Miss Jones, Mr. Mariello, supervisors, and teachers. All right? Teachers are the boots on the ground. They're seeing the kids in front of them who should be recommended for a certain course. And then certain kids just need a little tap on the shoulder to say, hey, you should take this test. So I am going to say these results don't happen by accident. Again, it starts with teachers, and it's also with the support of administrators or what have you, in creating the culture, and we hear about that a lot, where kids can take that risk, all right, where you say you can do it, it's worth it. So anyhow, that's That's my belief.
And we hope that next year, after, the PSATs, finally giving PSATs to all students this year, that we'll be able to identify more students and
Yes.
really encourage them to take that opportunity as well.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what
And
we're
the-
hoping.
And they're talking
Okay.
about that at the high school, yes.
So my question was, is this year, because I know my son was one of them, got to take the PSAT, is that going to be happening every year now?
Absolutely.
Sweet.
Yes.
Okay. I also just wanted to thank you, Jason, for the information on Orton Gillingham and phonics. That's been a passion of mine for a long time. I'm also an Orton Gillingham trained teacher, and I do think it was a critically important aspect. A lot of people don't understand that phonemic awareness is a foundational skill that every child must have starting in preschool. And if we have full day kindergarten and those kids get phonemic awareness full day during kindergarten, we're going to see a dramatic increase in reading ability. And I'm greatly appreciative.
Right, and so we're about 4 years in our rollout of phonics and phonemic awareness, that curriculum, and now we're in our first year of actually the cohort for Orton Gillingham and training teachers for that certification. And so that is what we're hearing, that there is, an increased, like, teachers are seeing the benefits of it in the classroom, so.
Mr. Morial, I have two questions that I apologize for not thinking of them when we saw this presentation at Academic, and I do not expect an answer right now, and I just want to put it in your head as data points that we might want to take a look at.
Sure.
I'm curious, what are the percentage of students in AP classes who are taking the exam versus those who might not be? I don't know what the breakdown is. That's something we might want to consider later on. And the other question is, what percentage of students are eligible for taking AP classes and are taking it? We have here that 23% of students are taking an AP exam, but we don't know what percentage of students are actually eligible to be in a class because there are prereqs that they can't do. Like, you can't take AP Bio in your sophomore year, for
Right.
example. So I'm curious what those numbers are going to be. Not for today,
Right.
but for
Good,
some
glad,
time.
because I don't have those answers today,
Exactly.
but.
So thank you.
We will have those numbers after we really do an analysis of the PSAT scores.
Sounds good.
Just to piggyback off of what Stacy had commented on, I would assume, I think we've mentioned this before, that if we had full day kindergarten, these kids would also, that would be in the ESL programs and other programs like it, they would have access earlier to this kind of educational resource, which would probably also impact test scores.
So I have to ask the expert statistician and data analysis person. When I look at the SAT scores for math, what our scores rose on average 13 points, where nationally it went down, what was it, 10 points?
Yep.
Is that statistically significant?
Yes.
Right, because you say, all right, it's 23 points, but what does that really mean? I mean, is it?
23 points on the SAT is significant. That's a significant increase, yes.
Okay.
That would be. It's a very large, that's the thing. When we're comparing to the nation and the large sample size that we have, yeah, to see a 23-point difference across that is definitely statistically significant. Tapping into my statistical consulting background here.
Thank you. And look, I just wanted to add, as the superintendent, I am extremely proud of the work that people are doing. And it starts again with the dedication of our teachers. All right, we came out of COVID. The last 2 years have not been easy by any stretch of the imagination. But I think when we look at this and we paint the picture, we are doing significantly better than a lot of other districts. Not that it's perfect, but we're doing significantly better. And I want to give kudos to the teachers out there who are the boots on the ground working with kids, the parents, administrators, everyone involved, because it is a team effort. And you know, there are a few times where we get to take a victory lap, so to speak, but I think teachers and everyone involved deserve that victory lap. So again, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Jones, for all the work people
Absolutely, they do. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Morella. That was very informative. We appreciate it.
Thank you all.
I'm on it. We are very fortunate to have our students here today, and while it's not on our agenda, I want to give you the opportunity, if you have a student report, Gianna and Sia, the floor is yours.
So I was actually going to talk about the PSAT that was taken or administered last week. Exactly what I was going to say. So 2,000 of those students, the underclassmen, took the PSAT. So I think it's really significant that they are able to see, like in the future, that they're eligible or that they can succeed in the AP classes. I know as a senior, I didn't have that on the college board. I didn't have access to that information. So you know, I hear a lot of students talk about taking, oh, what should I take this AP exam or AP class? And I think it's important that people have that, students have that kind of urge and motivation to take more AP classes. I think that's really important, and people can, in the future, they're more successful. And then, let's see how you could go on.
So tomorrow the high school is having a club fair, and essentially what that is not all of the clubs, but the majority of the clubs that are in the high school are being presented in the large gym. So this is tomorrow and Wednesday. And so the point is that the people who lead the club can promote it for mostly underclassmen who are looking to join clubs that might interest them. And this way, if they walk around, they look at the presentations, if they find something they might be interested in, they can join easily. And this just gives them access to something to do in their free time if they're interested in it. And I think it's a good way to promote school activities and promote, like, hobbies.
Also starting next week is intramural sports during unit lunch. Mrs. Antunes is the head of the intramural sports, and we're starting with handball. So they're going to be like month-long competitions where students are able to compete against each other and have fun. Yeah, so there was a Google Classroom code sent out in the weekly update, and students are able to join through there. And we are seeing a lot of students that are interested.
Also, a few weeks ago, we had our first homecoming dance in many years, and it was very successful. There was a good turnout of students. There was good music, good food. People enjoyed it. There was a lot of dancing. And the student council is already planning a new dance, another dance. So it might be either a winter formal or a spring fling. And this is only for upperclassmen, but I think it's a good thing that we're starting so many dances because we haven't had any dances besides prom in so many years. So it's getting good, positive results.
And then an update on our seniors this year. This week is the deadline for early action, early decision applications. So I think a lot of seniors are kind of stressed about that, but they are taking it every day, day by day, and I think personally I've seen a lot of people and a lot of students that are applying early action, applying early decision. I think it's more important that they do that, and yeah.
And then speaking of college apps, we also have Mrs. Kaiser, who's our new college counselor in the high school. And what she does is every Tuesday and Thursday, she's available after school. So any senior who needs help reviewing their application or specifically their college essays can go to her, and she can give them feedback and advice on how to improve their application so that they're well prepared for their college deadlines. And this is, like I said, every Tuesday and Thursday after school until the college deadlines are over. And this allows students to review their applications. But another thing that's very positive about this is that when they go there, there's other students there as well who are trying to get help for their college applications. And this allows them to have a chance to work with other peers as well to get their essays and whatever application reviewed by other peers as well as Mrs. Kaiser. The students who want more of one-on-one help they might not get that from Mrs. Kaiser because she's available for all students. It's a shared resource, but they can go to their guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor can help them with their application so that everything's good to submit for their college application.
Okay. And that is the end of our report.
Just wanted to say excellent job, and I heard great things about the homecoming dance, and as well as the student competitions and everything. Anyone I talked to have said it's really the best it's been in quite some time. And I really want to commend both of you, for your excellent reporting here, which is really, no, look, you're doing a great job going back and forth. And, I think we know with a lot of young people out there, the thing that a lot of folks are asking for is the opportunity to really just get together in a social setting and hang, whether it's a dance, whether it's a class competition, et cetera. I know as students, you're under a lot of pressure, you have a lot of homework, et cetera. And, I'm just glad that both of you are involved with organizing this and are a part of promoting this. So thank you. Doing a great job.
Thank you both. And actually, I'm sorry, she raised a question in my mind. Will the guidance department have the access to the PSAT, not the scores per se, but the recommendations as to what students might want to be interested in AP exams, and then they can also kind of shepherd them along in that regard?
Absolutely.
All right, great. Thank you. Again, thank you both. We really appreciate it. And as always, it's 9 o'clock. We're cognizant of your time. You don't have to stay, but you are welcome to stay because you've already given us a lot to think about, so I appreciate that. We're up.
Early action deadline.
Thank you both.
Have a good night. All right, we're up to the President's Report. So I just wanted to thank our board members and administrators for their flexibility in rescheduling tonight's meeting. We postponed the meeting that would have normally taken place last week so that board members could attend the New Jersey School Boards Association's workshop convention, and the majority of our board attended that meeting, that workshop, which is, I think, very important for our board to do so. We were able to learn from the top educational professionals in the state on various topics. Just a couple examples of what I attended. I attended presentations on the strategic planning process that our district will be undertaking this year, some updates on decisions from the School Ethics Commission, and general boardsmanship. If anyone else wants to share what they took, we can do that now, or you can do that during new business. New business it is, great. The workshop also featured a viewing area in which the Garden State Film Festival and the New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission screened the Best of the Fest student-produced short films from school districts across the state of New Jersey at workshop. They had a whole screening area with popcorn, and they had some of the students there who could have a Q&A afterwards. Two of our students were honored there. Sophia Consalvo had her short film called A Moment to Breathe, and Chris Zhu had his short film called Score, screened at the workshop. Both of them are actually 2024 graduates of BR, and this is the second year in a row that both of them actually had films selected for screening. I think it says a lot about our BR TV program and our arts program that these students have had those opportunities. The films were actually submitted last fall for the festival, which took place last spring, but this is the first opportunity for a workshop to have them there. Chris's film, in addition to being honored at the workshop, was awarded the Homegrown Drama Award for high school students by the Garden State Film Festival. So a big congratulations to both Sophia and Chris, and I'm very curious where they're going to be in a few years, because they're going places. In addition, and lastly, Leanne Matthews was honored at the NJSBA workshop for their Emerging Leaders Recognition Ceremony. We're fortunate to have Ms. Matthews on our staff. Leanne has worked in the ESL field since 2013. She joined Bridgewater-Raritan in 2019 as an ESL instructional coach. She served on the NJ Department of Education's Bilingual Advisory Committee and is presently the Vice President and President-elect of the New Jersey Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Languages / New Jersey Bilingual Educators Association. Leanne became our District Supervisor of ESL and World Languages this past July. So on behalf of the board, I want to send Leanne our sincere congratulations on being recognized by the New Jersey chapter of the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development as an emerging leader, and applaud her participation in this leadership program. That's all I have. Thank you. Mr. Walker, your Vice President's report.
little bit of calendar update. Going in October, we had the hearing of the SST reports tonight, so that's done, and you check that off. Next month, Mr. Beers has indicated we'll have the pending legal matters, the third and final one, and we'll have a couple attorneys here for that and reports. We also have the approval of the school safety security plan annual review. That'll be coming, I guess. I can't. I'm forgetting. I'm forgetting what that is actually at the moment. So to be honest, one of those things. In November, we have the board election and the referendum vote next week. We have the approval submission of CUSAC statement of assurances. I got to sit on the meeting as the board representative last week, and it's all complete. It's quite amazing all the documents that the administration and the staff have assembled to meet the requirements. CUSAC is quite a lift for all you administrators, so I appreciate it. We're only doing it every 3 years, thank gosh. But you guys, what I saw, you did a fantastic job. We have in November the review of the audit report and approval, and that we had the preliminary report in the finance facilities the other day. We had the district testing report today, so we're ahead of schedule on that. The annual approval of the school health nursing service plan. And coming up next month, recognition of staff members who have earned tenure or achieved a significant career milestones and advanced degrees. And in November, we should start thinking about completing the online board self-evaluation forms. And leading into that, we might want to think about our usually board retreat in December, Steve. So scheduling. Anyways, that's my report. Thank you.
And Barry, just I know there was one thing that was out there a little bit I didn't get back to you guys on it. But the next meeting, we are going to have Doug and David here. We'll go into closed session for those legal matters. And they will be able to provide a synopsis of everything prior to us going into closed.
Thank you. We're up to committee reports. Up first is the academic committee with Mrs. Levitt. Do you have yours up or no?
I'm ready to go.
Okay,
yes.
great.
Yes.
Since she can't be here, we're going to turn it over to Ms. Jones.
Okay, academic committee met on October 16th at 6:30. In attendance were Ms. Levitt, Mr. Joshi, Mr. Singer, me, Mr. Beers, and Mr. Moriello. The first thing that we did was the state standardized assessment results, part 2, so I will not go through that all again with you right now. But you can see, like academic committee, we dig in deep. The following policies were reviewed: religion in the schools, eligibility of resident, non-resident students, and education of homeless children and youths. Most of the recommended revisions were just to streamline language and or to align with new guidelines or law. The one change that I checked with our board attorney was that going forward, specific to eligibility of resident, non-resident students, as revised, the policy removes the board's ability to allow non-residents to attend schools without payment of tuition. And then I also checked that if a family is going to enter into a contract to rent, build, or buy in the district uses 8 weeks prior to the date of residency as the time frame to attend schools in the district, but as tuition students. We also abolished the pilot program policy and regulation because that was really specific to COVID needs and it no longer exists. We reviewed the interscholastic athletic schedule. And then finally, a committee member asked if we had drop-down information yet. So that would be any kind of movement from honors or AP classes into academic classes. And we do not have that yet, but we will be looking at that shortly. And then we adjourned at 8:40.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. And the next meeting is Thursday.
Next meeting is Thursday.
Turn it around quick. Up next is community relations with Mrs. Friedlander.
Our next meeting is November 17th.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, you're up with FFT.
Yes, we met October 18th at 5 p.m. at the Wade Building. In attendance was Mr. Singer, Mr. Pepe, Ms. Lee, myself, Mr. Stars, Mr. Beers, Mr. Lemsky, Bob Schwisser, our auditor, Wayne Miller, our auditor, Alexis Goldman, our architect, and Bob Lesko, the district's project managing engineer. It was we had a bit packed house there, Karen. We got a lot of people there to keeping up with us, all right. At first, we had the audit report. Mr. Swisher and Mr. Miller presented the audit report to review the results of the annual audit for the district finances. The finances are fairly stated. The district is in compliance, and all the state regulations are there are no recommendations, which means we have a unmodified clean audit, which is a very, very great thing to do. There's only been, I think, I've only had 2 recommendations in 9 years from our audits, so we've had quite good staff. So the audit should be ready. And this year, actually, we will get the audit on time, which has been unusual because of some of the state numbers, so that will be coming on time.
To clarify, it's not that the auditors or that.
No, it was a state.
Or that our staff has made it not on time.
It's a state issue with some CAFRs that assemble along with the audit, so that's the reason why. So it's some state numbers, but they came in early this year, so they're very excited, as auditors get. Project updates. The committee reviewed the draft business agenda for this evening and for the meeting. Particular attention was shown to the purchases, some grant amendments, policy update, and competitive contracting. The committee had a consensus to approve the motions for this evening's meeting. Some of the things on there we also had some other conversations. You'll see a lot of things on there about projects, referendum update coming next. Referendum update. Mrs. Alexis Goldman, the architect, and the district referendum project manager, Bob Letso, reviewed the status and the timeline of different estimates and the project going on. Some of those projects going on right now it's quite numerous. So we've had some outside the project. We're looking at redoing the grandstands. There are paving projects. They're bidding the windows. They're doing the numbers on the HVAC system in numerous buildings, bathrooms in numerous schools. It's like, holy cow. The list is quite a bit. So quite impressed what they're having to do. Doing. There's no recommendation at the time. There's a few things on the agenda that we'll be bidding out next time. You'll see for placement. Other matters, the committee discussed an update in the transportation consultant meetings and the district GPS install timeline. The district added we add additional consulting to help redo our routing, and we also purchased a new system of GPS as the timeframe coming in, and then the training for the individuals. Any questions? Did I miss something?
No, not at all.
Okay. Discussion over here. Right, that's my report. Our next meeting is November 6th at 5:30 p.m. That's Monday.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Mr. Joshi could not be here, but our next personnel meeting is on November 13th. And are there any liaison or delegate reports? Mike? No? Barry? Liaison delegates?
It's not so much a delegate, but it seems like I liaison with the police a lot. So last week I participated in the active shooter training scenario at the mall, and I just wanted to acknowledge that while we talk a lot about law enforcement officers and their role in that, not just the training, but their response, in recent years, what I've learned from NJSBA is there is far more of a focus on bringing in emergency personnel during what is still an active scene. And I just want to commend and thank first responders who don these bulletproof uniforms and come into these scenarios, prepared to save lives in very scary situations. So that was it. That was what I had.
Thank you, Ms. Lockman. Anyone else? No. Okay. We're up to item number 12, our first public comment period on action items only. Individuals and/or groups are invited to present their concerns, comments, and requests regarding the following action items to the Board of Education at this time. In accordance with board policy, members of the public are allotted one opportunity to address the board for a maximum of 5 minutes during this period of the meeting. Please be advised that a video recording of this meeting will be posted on the district's website. And again, this is only for the action items that follow. Once, twice. I'm going to close that portion of public comment. We're up to item number 13, the approval of minutes.
Second.
Are there any questions or changes? Seeing none, Mr. Starsh.
Ms. Lochran.
Yes.
Mr. Pepe.
Yes.
Ms. Calistri. Yes. Ms. Freelander.
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Singer.
Yes, the motion passes. We're up to item number 14, our approval of action items. Up first is Personnel 2415, for which I'll take a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Moved. Second.
Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, Mr. Stars.
Ms. Lochran,
Yes.
Mr. Pepe,
Yes.
Ms. Calistri,
Yes.
Ms. Freelander,
Here, I'm sorry, yes. I'm like here. Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Late. Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Singer.
Yes, the motion passes. I want to congratulate Mr. Rogers, Mr. Smith, and Mr. Del Prairie on their new positions or hiring. So congratulations. We're up to Curriculum 24-23 through Curriculum 24-26.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
It just occurred to me for the interscholastic schedule that we're approving some events that stretch into March of 2024, which is incredible at this point. Just point that out. I thought the school year just started.
Yeah, it feels that way. All right. No one else? Mr. Stars.
Ms. Lochran,
Yes.
Mr. Pepe,
Yes.
Ms. Calistri,
Yes.
Ms. Freelander,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Walker. Yes. Mr. Singer.
Yes, the motion passes. We're up to Business 24-48 through Business 24-58.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions? I have a few. The bus that we're purchasing, is that a new bus?
Yes.
Okay. And the sewage flow meter that went out,
Yes.
is that an increase in bid or?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. And that's it. So, Mr. Stars.
Ms. Lochran,
Yes.
Mr. Pepe,
Yes.
Ms. Calistri,
Yes.
Ms. Freelander,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Singer.
I abstain on Business 24-53, yes on everything else. We're up to Special Services 24-16 and Special Services 24-17.
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, Mr. Stars.
Ms. Lochran,
Yes.
Mr. Pepe,
Yes.
Ms. Calistri,
Yes.
Ms. Freelander,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Abstain on SS 2416, yes on SS 2417.
Mr. Singer.
Yes, the motion passes. We're up to Other 24-12 through Other 24-14.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments that would require going into closed? No? Are there any questions that wouldn't require us going into closed? Seeing none, Mr. Stars.
Ms. Lochran,
Yes to 2412 and 2414, abstain from 2413.
Mr. Pepe,
Yes.
Ms. Calistri,
Yes to all, well, abstain from 2413, yes to those two.
Ms. Freelander,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Singer.
Yes, the motion passes. Up to Policy 2404 through Policy 2407.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions?
I would like to have some discussion. 2404, that policy regarding religion. I saw that there's part of the language that was removed, talking about how teachers and the content of the class can include certain religious topics, and I see that that was actually removed from the policy. So I was wondering, what is the guideline now then for content that may have relation to religion? I think this policy right now specify more on the practice and expression, like prayers and activities. But that paragraph talking about the content in the curriculum, content in the classroom teaching, that was removed. So I do not know what is the new guideline regarding that now.
So that guideline hasn't changed. What changes is that they streamlined the language because the United States Department of Education, they released guidance on the change of language. So the last time they had done it was in 2020, and now they did it again in 2023. So they just align the language. Sometimes what Strauss Esme is actually doing as they change policies, they're taking out like other information. So if there's extra information that's aligned to laws, they will reference the name of a law, and they won't go into all the details on the law or the statute. And this way, if that changes again, they don't have to go back and change the policy. So it's just, it's still the same general principles. Like you can use, for example, you might be referring to like that you can teach, text that's like from the Bible, for example, if you're looking at like world literature, or you're looking at it historically, but you're not teaching it as religion, you're teaching it as text. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I just want to know,
Yeah.
because there's specific guidelines in the content that
Right.
was removed, so I do not know
Right,
what's
I think,
the new guidance.
well, I think what happened is we had probably at some point inserted our own language into it, and so when you're revising the policy, what we're getting is the actual law, so anything that's extra like that is removed. But it wouldn't change how we're teaching it. You still cannot teach it as religion, but you still can use text, as text.
So basically, nothing changes in classroom teaching or how
That's
the teachers
correct.
prepare
That's
the
correct. It was
lessons.
really just streamlining language, right?
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
So like
You're welcome.
Godspell, the play that they put on a few weeks ago would still be okay under this, even though it was based obviously on taken straight from a religious text.
Yes.
Great play, by the way.
Yes.
Yes. And this is also the first reading of this, correct? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So if you have any questions on it, you can feel free to email Mrs. Levitt and Ms. Jones as well.
Thank you.
Any other policy questions or comments? Seeing none, Mr. Stars.
Ms. Lochran,
Yes.
Mr. Pepe,
Yes.
Ms. Calistri,
Yes.
Ms. Freelander,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Singer.
Yes, the motion passes. We're up to item number 15, our second public comment period. Individuals and their groups are invited to present their concerns, comments, and requests to the Board of Education at this time for any matters. In accordance with board policy, members of the public are allotted one opportunity to address the board for a maximum of 5 minutes during this period of the meeting. Please be advised that a video recording of this meeting will be posted on the district's website.
Hello. It's been a long wait sitting out there. Okay, so a lot of good information though. Laura Kress, I'm the president of the Bridgewater-Raritan Education Association. And usually around election time, you hear a lot of things. A word I was thinking of today is scuttlebutt. That's an old school word, right? But there's a lot of scuttlebutt going around our town and other towns. So I just wanted to take this time to sort of address the board and discuss the BREA, what we do around election time, most of you know, and just sort of review maybe the ethical standards found in New Jersey Statute 18A:12-24.1. So, as most of you noticed, the BREA, right, we do not support any one group or group of candidates in an election. We send out a questionnaire to all the candidates, then we share those responses with our association members, and we did that today. And this is because we believe we can find common ground with everyone running and see no need to pick a proverbial side. I'm pretty big on that. So just as a reminder, though, as people running or maybe, people interested in the Board of Ed or running in the future, that there are, again, the state statute dictates sort of an ethical code and policies on what can and can't be done or interfered with as a member of the Board of Education. And so I just want to point out that there's specific letters in this statute, C and D, that indicate the board members are to limit their actions to framing policy and not interfering with the day-to-day activities of the district. That further, letters F and I of the statute mandate that board members will not defer their judgment to any special interests and will support and protect all school personnel. And finally, that letter J of the statute stipulates that any concerns about the district will be directed to the superintendent. So again, it's around election time. I'm not pointing, this isn't toward anyone or anything specific, but, things happen. You hear words on the streets in this town and others, and I just want to put it out there because I would like us to stay as we are right now. And it's my hope that both current and future board members take their oath in the ethical code seriously, because we take it, the BREA takes it, that you take it seriously. And right now, currently, we remain open and optimistic that we can all, the BREA, the administration, and the board, build on the relationships we have established to become stronger for the betterment of our students. So that's my little speech for this evening. And I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate all that you do, because I feel like this is no easy job, especially in today's times and what's happening in the world around us. And teaching is not getting any easier either, in case anyone needs to hear that. So working in the school. So thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Kress. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of public comment. We are up to item number 16, old business. Is there any old business? All right, no. We're now then going to move to item number 17, new business. Mr. Beers.
Thank you, Mr. Singer. So we know it's been a 3-year odyssey to get us to this point with full-day kindergarten and the referendum. I said it before, but I encourage everyone, everyone sitting at this table, to please talk to your neighbors, talk to your contacts, etc. Remind people of the vote on Tuesday, and to get out there and vote. I'll be doing the same. So again, I appreciate all the hard work everyone has done, and I look forward to the result in a week.
And to that end, I want to thank Mr. Beers, Mr. Moran, and all of the administration that has been involved in getting the word out, getting to meetings, and educating our public as much as we can about this. And I hope that I hope that people come out and that they've listened to the reports that Mr. Beers has given. And if they do have any questions, please reach out to Mr. Beers or to referendum@brsd.org.
Thanks, Steve. And I want to thank the board members for their help at the Trick or Trunks and all those other events over the weekend. Trunk or treat, trick or trunk. I don't know. I'm sorry.
It's been a long day.
Well, it's been a long day. Trick or trunk. But all that helped, because obviously we had 7 events going on at the same time, and needed everybody's help in that regard. And with that, we know that on the elementary school calendar, the most important day of the year is tomorrow, right? For the primary schools, that's Halloween. So wishing everyone a safe, happy Halloween.
I was going to give a math test.
Oh.
I'm just joking. Come on.
And I know, especially in the primaries, it's a great day to go around and really see the schools. So it's a fun time.
Any other new business? Okay, then I need to add a closed session. So whereas discussion by the board is required on matters that are exceptions to the requirement that a public body hold its meetings in public, and whereas the topics for discussion are personnel, whereas it is expected that the details of the discussion may be made public as soon as the issues may be acted upon publicly, be it resolved that the board enters into closed session at this time.
I'll make the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. We are in closed session. We're going to return to open session for the sole purpose of a motion to adjourn. There will be no business actions taken after that. Thank you all.